Let the dragon consume you! Enemy sighted. Stop the payload! Stop the payload! In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Birdwatcher's back at it one more time. Here's your host, Ryan and Clay. They're about to bring you some sweet Overwatch action.
And we're back. So, welcome to this episode of The Birdwatchers. This is episode 46. We're going to be going over stage 2, week 5, and you may be asking, what about the other weeks, right? Took a brief hiatus. A lot of stuff was going on, so I had to take care of that. You know, a lot has happened in both the Overwatch world and the real world. But we're not going to dwell on that. There's too much news to go back over. That would be a whole episode of backtracking. A lot of you have probably, gotten up to date on that. So we're just going to pick up from here and keep moving forward as we get ready for the stage 2 playoffs. So some news, right? MomoCon's coming up. I know that's usually focused on cosplaying, but there will be an appearance from some Atlanta Reign team members, including coaches. So we'll leave that as a little surprise. But if you can get your passes, those are on sale now. MomoCon is, right around the corner. They have 4-day passes, and we're also giving away 4-day passes. The Atlanta Royal family, so check out the Twitter, has a link where you can essentially enter by following certain, parties to get a chance to win 1 or 2, if you're lucky, 4-day passes. So check that out. And if not, just go ahead and grab some passes. MomoCon's going to be fun. A lot of fans are going to be there. There's a lot of crossover between, cosplaying, anime, and the gaming community. Especially this is the first year you have a MomoCon and the Atlanta Reign team existing. So that should be fun to have that representation there. So if you're there, definitely come by and say hi, because I will be there. I already got my 4-day pass, so it should be exciting. Other news, stage 2 playoffs, right? Coming up following the All-Star game. So this year it's a little bit different, where the All-Star game is in the middle of the season rather than the end. And this is going to be following the stage 2 playoffs, which will be next week, which we'll also be covering. As this one is this episode is us seeing how the cards fell and who ended up making it in, which is actually very interesting, this stage, but we'll get into it. Other news, Atlanta Royal Family Diamond Level event. So we've had, I want to say 2 in the past so far, and our Diamond Level events are our mid-level events, as a reminder, which we try to, it usually involves about 150 to, 200 plus people. And this one will be at Battle and Brew again, which is, our home field, and it should be fun. We actually have a special guest from the team coming to hang out for his first Atlanta watch party, and he's excited. So we'll have giveaways. Diamond events usually have giveaways from both the Atlanta Royal family and the official team. So that's going to be at 9 p.m. on Thursday. And this is for all fans. This is not just Atlanta fans, because this watch party event is for the All-Star game. So if you like any team, come hang out. You'll see the Atlanta Reign banner. You'll see a lot of jerseys. It's the hometown, right? That's just the way it's going to be. But that'll be at Battle and Brew. So definitely come check it out, and, jump by the meetup page for the Atlanta Royal family. If you can make it, go ahead and sign up. So we have that kind of attendance kept track there, or just, comment on the Twitter and mention that you're coming. So keep an eye out for more of that, because I think Battle and Brew will also be posting about that event. And game-related news, we had the Havana patch. The Havana map, if you know from the recent event that just ended, is an escort map that is now live on the servers. So go play that. And then in addition to that, we have the Lucio and Mercy All-Star skins that are now available. And those are available until May 2nd. So let's get into the episode. We're not going to start with standings this time, because we're going into the stage 2 playoffs. I want to kind of leave some mystery as to who made it in. We're going to cover our 2 matches, and then we'll talk about how that kind of resulted, or how that affected who made it into the stage 2 playoffs. So we're going to start off with Uprising versus Gladiators. And this is a good one. Not a lot at stake here, because Gladiators have been crushing it this stage. And we talked about how the previous stage they struggled, stage 1. and they were getting things together, and they finally found their groove. Unfortunately, they found their groove against Atlanta and gave us, a very big loss in my opinion. But this stage, they've been 6-0 up to this point, up to this game. So they clinched their spot. They're pretty much guaranteed in. But they're playing an Uprising team that has been upsetting, setting records as far as just going to game 5s and dominating and reverse sweeps and such. Boston is a very scrappy team, especially with the addition of fusions, which has been great. And, this kind of a game that, there's not a lot at stake here, but it is cool to see where both teams have ended up. So let's get into it. Our first match is Oasis, right? So that's our control map as we start off. We start with University, and Uprising comes out, with Snotes here, and they dominate. They actually take this round 100-0. So a surprising debut in this match. And then we go to City Center as our round 2 of Oasis, and Gladiators start off better here, right? I mean, Uprising do get close to stealing this one from them by using triple DPS comp, which we have seen that the teams that are using the triple DPS comp and the teams that are facing it usually have more difficulty, even if it's not executed completely to, perfection. It's just with so much, coming off of a heavy GOATS meta before the patch shift, a lot of teams did not really prepare for this kind of shift in the meta where now you're having more things being played. I mean, there's some quad DPS stuff that's coming out. And then Hammond recently got buffs as well. That kind of makes this more disruptive. But the main thing on City Center is Color Hex on Widow, which is something we've been seeing him getting to play more of, and we now we remember, this is Color Hex. His Widow's impressive and is always disruptive, and if you don't deal with it, it's going to cause trouble, and it does cause trouble for Gladiators here, although they are able to take this round in the end. So that ties us up in the rounds, and then we move to our final round for Oasis, which is Garden, and Uprising, shows up here. This one is a back and forth brawl, and there's plenty of exciting Doomfist action, which I think is something a lot of people didn't think was going to happen. I know on Reddit, the discussion of Doomfist has kind of shifted to, we thought that he wouldn't be played after all the nerfs, and, teams would be afraid to experiment because it's kind of a high risk, high reward character. But we're seeing a lot more teams playing it now, and that's cool to see. And this is where you get probably the most Doomfist action you're going to get so far, and it's really good. This is probably the longest also overtime fight I've seen this season, because this one goes for a while, to the point where people are posting clips of just how long it was to wrap this map up. But it does go in Uprising's favor, and they take up Oasis. So Uprising starting off strong here against a Gladiators team that has been dominant up to this point. This takes us to Hanamura, where Uprising start on attack, and they're able to get the Gladiators to do what they want. The bunker comp, that the Gladiators are running, usually set up on the top porch situation. It's on the left-hand side if you're coming from the attack, and usually try not to move, right? Well, what they do is they force the Gladiators to shift their bunker comp around that first point, which leads to eventually them capping point 1, because the goal of that comp is to stay still and control the space. But then they attempt to use Genjis in a GOATS comp shell, and that's interesting. We haven't seen that much. Usually you see Genji on point 2 of Anubis, because that Dragon Blade helps with that momentum. But here, not so much, and it doesn't pay off for them. And it actually they get a bit more than a tick on point 2, the Uprising do here. But I think they could have done better if they gave up on that Genji a little earlier, and the commentators do mention that. And then we move to the Gladiators on attack here, and we see some soldier play from Decay, which is something we haven't seen much of, especially from him. And he's great, right? Decay's just solid all around, known for his tracking as well, as one of those players in the league. And convincingly take point 1, but then they get to point 2 and they struggle. He immediately swaps off Soldier, which I don't really know how Soldier fares on point 2. We haven't seen much of that yet, with all the elevation that's there. But they never are able to really get a solid attempt. And not to be too mean, but this point 2 is pretty boring. It's just them kind of burning time and not really getting any solid attempts. So once again, Uprising take a map off the Gladiators, and they go up 2-0, putting themselves in a position to end it here. So we move to Blizzard World, and Uprising start on attack here, and they start on point 1, but they're able to cap close to overtime. So it looks like Gladiators are finally putting up a wall here and saying, okay, we're not just gonna let you, roll over us. We're 6-0 up to this point. Like, give us a break. So they follow up with a smooth 0.2 cap, but without much time for multiple attempts. So they get stopped about a third of the way to 0.3. And that takes us to Gladiators on attack. And Gladiators have zero issues while rolling over the Uprising. Looks like a different team based on the first two maps of this series. And they amazingly get a full cap like super quickly, and this is on the back of, once again, Decay, who's kind of been showing out from the get-go of this match. Like, he's been performing at the level he's been performing at from the beginning of this match, and is starting to pay off towards the end of the series here. As he plays Zarya, his Zarya performance is a huge part of the dominance on this map. So now they make it 2-1 and kind of put him back in it to try to fight for this one. This takes us to Rialto, which Rialto is known for being kind of an up in the air. I don't know if there's a team that you can say that team is good at Rialto. Rialto is structured in a way that anything can happen, and mistakes can be heavily punished, which puts it in anyone's favor. So we start with Uprising on attack again here, and despite their struggles throughout this map, like, there's a lot of fights in this map. A lot of engagements happen on Rialto. Although actually I would give Rialto the map of the match just because of pure content. So check that one out. But despite their struggles, they end up capping both 0.1 and 0.2 in overtime. They get the cart super close to 0.3, but they end up getting held there. So props to Gladiators for not completely folding under the pressure. But on Gladiators attack, they don't have an easy time here either. And they're forced into overtime situations similar to Uprising. So it's like a mimic type situation, but they're not able to rise to the challenge, which leads them to losing this map and the series 3-1 to Uprising. So a surprising outcome, right? Because you have a team, Uprising, I think they were 3-3 coming into this. So they had some ups and downs. They did, some reverse sweeps and such, but they were kind of inconsistent throughout this stage. And the Gladiators, not so much. They were completely consistent. So to see them kind of drop it here, maybe it's a case of lighter practices or preparing for stages or the stage playoff rather than just this game that doesn't really affect them. I'm a big, advocate of finish strong because you can end up in a situation like Excelsior where they're known for not finishing because they have the wins and they just kind of drop the ball towards later games. But props to Uprising for taking that map. So our second and final match for this episode is going to be, naturally, Reign versus Excelsior. So this was hype, right? This was something that everyone was talking about because, as you know, we did beat them. We were the first team to beat them in a long time. And that's a big deal because Excelsior is looked at as this giant, this undefeatable thing. And they have Jonak and the way they play, super defensive. And it's very intimidating because they are so dominant. Less intimidating this season because the Vancouver Titans and San Francisco Shock exist. So they kind of, it's like, oh, there's more than one Titan now. There's now a literal Titan in the league. But all jokes aside, a lot of people said, okay, well, Reign beat them, but it was a fluke because we went on to lose to Valiant. So they're like, okay, and then, the charge situation. But we're inconsistent. That's not news. That's not anything crazy to think about. It's just something that is. And even I was surprised that, Baby Bay, whenever he's interviewed, or any of the players are interviewed, Dogman as well, they have mentioned that inconsistency is our weak point. If we can fix that, we're going to be a great team. And we have that because we have a potential. I like to say we have a super low floor and a very high ceiling when it comes to performance. But this game is important. Because if we can do this again, that means it's not a fluke, right? And that means it's probably a rivalry. And I would be very happy to have a rivalry with the New York Excelsior because, as, a part member of the Atlanta Royal family, we have much love for Five Deadly Venoms, right? They were inspirational for what we do now in Atlanta for watch parties and stuff like that and their support for their team. So it's kind of like a friend. We're always ready to play them, both being in the same division as well. Let's get into it. I rambled enough, right? Reign versus Excelsior here. So we start off with our control map, which is Oasis. And we have University. And this round is back and forth from the beginning. Both teams coming out to play. And Reign ended up squeezing out the win here by actually zoning NYXL off the point towards the end in the final fight. So, smart play works in our favor there. So we take University. We go to the Garden round. And NYXL pull it out here after back and forth again. Both teams are playing at their peak right here to tie this up. So then we get in the City Center, which is our final round for Oasis, and it's clear that both teams really want to win. This goes back and forth for the third time, but Rain is able to swing the fight in their favor towards the end. They take this map, and we take this win to start off, which is a huge momentum shift. Not a momentum shift, a huge way to start this momentum because it gets in their heads, right? We won the game before, we're coming into this new game, and we immediately do the same thing we did before, which is surprising. So Hanamura is our next map, and this is our map of the match. But something that I don't like it for is that we put in FRD for Dako. Now, I think everybody kind of knows the reason we're doing this is because supposedly FRD has a solid Sombra, and it opens up that option for us. But we're not playing a team like Boston, right? Or we're not playing Dallas Fuel, teams who are known for implementing their Sombra play to throw off other GOATS teams. So the FRD sub in here doesn't really make sense to me. And I do know that Dako has been practicing his Sombra to be serviceable because his diva is so much better than FRD's diva. It's just something we saw when he was kind of suspended or out of play for a while when we had FRD mainly starting, is that, he has an issue with tracking grabs and then eating those grabs. His decision making is still kind of new, and he's a newer player in the Overwatch League. He was in Contenders, but here it's a different world, so he's kind of has to adjust. And Dako is known as one of the up and coming diva prodigies. He's even spoken about how much he loves diva and his obsession with that character in a couple interviews he's done in the past. So we have that sub here. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. We start with Atlanta on attack on Hanamura. Atlanta starts off with a triple DPS comp, and they have a beautiful set piece. And we've seen this before, not to this consistency where they're doing it more often, but we have Bebe on Hanzo, and we put Erster on the Pharah. And they're getting better at working that composition and that duality here, because on point one, what they do is they force NYXL, who's a mostly defensive team, to the back left of the point, up those stairs. So that's if you're facing from the attack point of view. And then what they do is Bebe Hanzo on the opposite side is controlling that door for their entrance back in with Hanzo and just building ult. And Erster is monitoring from the skies above that area. So when Bebe gets his ult, he dragons, forces them to move back up the stairs off the point. They contest point, and then Erster comes around, sets up for a barrage, lands the barrage, and they cap point one. It's a beautiful set piece, and it looks very clean. So pay attention to that and see if you can pull it off, on ladder. But it's good to see Hanzo play this much, because despite people knowing his capabilities, I think a lot of teams are not willing to risk it or have the players that play a lot of Hanzo. So we're kind of, I don't want to say the progenitor of it, but we're now bringing that, it seems like we're bringing that back in the meta, and it's working against one of the best teams in the league. So after capping point one, we struggle on point two. This is until FRD actually does the best thing he's done in his short career in the Overwatch League so far, where he gets a huge defensive matrix to eat Nene's Zarya grab, and then immediately follows up with a well-placed 2K bomb on top of our grab, and we're able to full cap in overtime. And then this moves to Excelsior on attack. NYXL, they cap point one after a few attempts, and then almost immediately cap point two until Dogman makes an impressive decision. So everybody always talks about Dogman's decision making as far as when he dies, when he trances, his positioning, stuff like that, which you can see the growth in it, because he's a maniac when it comes to practicing, and that's what you need to become a better player and to become great, and why he's grinded through Contenders to get here. But he makes a great decision in which, we're losing a fight, and he shifts to the upper deck near the entrance to get behind the team and starts fragging out to save that initial attempt, and buys us half the time. And at half the time it takes them, I think they had like 3 minutes at that point, and NYXL do end up capping, but this time they only end up capping with 1:35. So that actually plays in our favor later here when we go to round two, where we start an attack, and, they're able to cap point one. Rain starts on attack. We're able to cap point one very quickly, but we have, point two taken away by Mono making a big risk by hiding in a corner if you go up to the right to try to make your attempt. He's hiding in a corner by that giant health pack, and we don't see it. We don't kind of read that call, and then he shatters the whole team, takes away that attempt, ends our ends our run on round 2. And this goes to NYXL, where I feel like we would have held. But here, we go into the issue of the original sub and why I don't like it is that, NYXL, they cap point 1 quickly as well, like we did. And then on point 2, they attempt to have this setup where everybody's kind of positioned, and FRD has a huge blunder. I don't know if it's miscommunication or if it's just eagerness or if it's just, inexperience, but he just flies his diva directly into NYXL as they're preparing to attempt. So our team's not in position to follow up. He gets DMAC'd and immediately killed. That flips the fight. NYXL kills us, and then they end up taking it, tying this series up 1-1. That's something, that inconsistency with FRD, and I say FRD, it's fried. I know it's fried, and I just don't want to say it. I think it should be FRD. All right, I'll say fried. The thing with fried is that that inconsistency is what differentiates great players from all the other players, right? Because when you have a huge play like that and everybody's clapping, everybody's cheering, everybody's saying, yo, Fried stepped up, he's definitely getting better as a diva player in the league, and then you follow up with a simple blunder as far as being out of position, that, come on, like, that you can't do that. If you're gonna do cool things, keep doing cool things. And that's how people will say, oh, you're great, and that will make you better, right? And that leads to wins, because this could have been one that would end it quicker. But now it's tied up. So we go to Blizzard World. We have Daco sub back in. Naturally, people saw that coming. With Daco's return, I have noticed that Fried hasn't played more than one game, so he usually subs in for one. And that's probably them trying to figure out where his place is or where they might want to use this Sombra. But we do get to see Daco on some Sombra here. So we start with Excelsior on attack, and NYXL has a bit of trouble on point 1, but they get the cap, and then Rain swap to this aggressive style that we usually play on defense, right? And Daco just starts performing out of his mind, right? Like, it's like what you see Color Hex usually do on Widow when he swaps. But yeah, gets on Diva, starts performing out of his mind. NYXL is able to get to about Pylon Terrace before they get held for the remainder of their time. This takes us to Rain attack, and Rain come out on that Hanzo Farah Sombra comp again. So that triple DPS that we've been consistently using in certain situations, and it causes a lot of trouble for NYXL. And this is something that people are getting to where it feels like NYXL is becoming more stubborn when it comes to swapping and adjusting, or maybe they're just not practicing it because they're so dominant at what they do. They're kind of sticking to the formula of just protect the Jonak, make sure he stays alive and let him frag out. And he did frag out. Trust me, I found out in my fantasy. He had 212. Like, I know we don't talk about the Overwatch Fantasy League stuff on here, but I am doing it with other podcast mates. Shout out to all of them. But he had 212 points. He had like double the points of most flex supports this week. So that's all that aside. Anyways. Yeah, we give them a lot of trouble, right? They seem to be having issues dealing with it. And this actually allows Rain to just cruise and full cap without much issue, putting us up 2-1 in this series, which is insane at this point. And I'm actually watching from my phone because I was out and about and couldn't be at home to watch the game. So I'm following on my phone. And I could not believe that, like, are we gonna do this? Like, are we legitimately gonna do this? So then we get to Junkertown. And Excelsior is mad. So Rain on attack here, extreme struggle on point 1, where NYXL is not giving an inch. And the one thing that gets us through it is in overtime somehow we're able to get that cap. And then after we get that cap, we cruise through point 2 and get fairly close to capping point 3. So we kind of save that attempt after Excelsior tries to put the boot on our neck. This takes us to Excelsior on attack, and NYXL encounter brief stalls, but they have more of a consistent movement throughout the points, and this is kind of on the back of what we've seen in the past with Zarya grabs from Baby Bay. So he's been doing better. He's been growing as a Zarya player and been more consistent with his gravitational pulls. But in this map, I think he's like 3 or 4. Like every grab, I want to say every grab he has is a terrible grab. With timing, positioning, etc. And with NYXL, you can't, like, lo and behold, you can't even make one mistake because they'll capitalize on it. But making that many, that allows them to just kind of cruise through this, and the engagements are kind of rough. So we never really get a solid alt economy fight, even though we're not really behind on alts. It's just we're using them poorly. And this leads to a full cap for Excelsior, and it ties us up 2-2. And this takes us to Li Zhang to end it on control. So Garden, come out. Reign start off this round convincingly. We get to 99 before NYXL even gets a chance to flip the point. They do flip the point for a brief second, and then we take it. So that's a great look, right? So it takes us to the second round on Night Market, and NYXL gives us a taste of our own medicine, where they get to 98 before we flip it. But once we take this point, we do not give it back, and I did not expect this. Immediately when I saw it get to 98%, I was like, okay, cool. On to the next one. Let's hope that we just end this, because they showed a stat that out of the 4 times that we have pushed it to game 5, we have never won. And that's not a good stat, because NYXL is known for being good at control maps, even though we won the first one during the series, but they're known for being good on control maps. So this isn't a situation where I felt very confident. But yeah, we did not give it back, and we wanted to win it then. So we end up 2-0ing these rounds and taking this map, and we beat NYXL for the second time. History, right? People made fun of Atlanta Reign for essentially breaking records, and instead of trying to be consistent, just trying to see what we could do to upset the flow of time and space. But very impressive. I think this is the official start of a rivalry, right? Like, I think we can say it's no longer a fluke. Whatever game plan we had, whatever game plan we developed was for NYXL, and it works. And I don't think those secrets are going to get out to other teams. So hopefully we can keep this going. Because I would love for them to recognize us as their rivals. That'll be cool, right? And we play them a lot because we're in their division, so it works out. So let's get into what we usually do, which is standings. So I'm not going to go through that specific week's standings. We're just going to talk about the playoff standings and what we're looking forward to for stage 2. So for stage 2, you have your first position going to San Francisco Shock, and they've said that I don't think we've done any San Francisco games on episodes this week, this stage, but we're going to talk about them again at some point because they've been so dominant. 7-0, and they did not drop a map this stage. Insane, 28 maps straight. That's followed by the second place in this stage playoffs, which is Vancouver Titans, who are also 7-0, but they dropped 3 maps. I know, not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but San Francisco, talk about a team that has been showing the growth that people kind of predicted, but were skeptical if they were going to be able to rise to that potential, and they did it, man. It's insane that they're pulling this off. Followed by London Spitfire. They've turned it around with the meta shift, right? And now they're back in their favor, so they're in the 3rd spot. Your 4th spot goes to the Los Angeles Gladiators, which I talked about, had a great run this stage after struggling in stage 1. New York Excelsior, you kind of expect them to be there. They're 5-2 this time, both losses being to Atlanta Reign, who we did not make it into the top 8 for this playoffs, but there's always stage 3, where homestand will happen, by the way. Homestand tickets, get those. It's open. They revealed, I don't know if I talked about it before, but they revealed the location. Tickets are available. Get your tickets. They're selling fast, very fast. It's a great venue. We'll be there. Everybody will be there, but we'll talk about that in future episodes. Your 6th spot is going to the Dallas Fuel, who also have been performing well, had their homestand, which was amazing. Shout outs to Bob, because I know he's happy with the way that turned out. It was a great experience, and I can't wait for ours just based on watching theirs. Hangzhou Spark is in your 7th place, which is surprising because they struggled stage 1. It looks like they found their way with the addition of, they essentially have foregone the whole communication issue and just play Gujue, play Crystal, right? They'll figure it out. They're great players, and they've shown that, and that has resulted in them being in the stage 2 playoffs. And then number 8 to, I want to say I'm shocked at this point because they've been playing extremely well. Shanghai Dragons, crazy, yeah. That's your top 8 for the stage 2 playoffs. So the matchups that we're going to talk about in the coming week, once they happen, right, is so Thursday you're going to have the Shanghai Dragons versus San Francisco Shock. You're going to have then the Spark versus London Spitfire. And then Friday, you're going to have NYXL versus Los Angeles Gladiators, and then Dallas Fuel versus Vancouver Titans. And all those matches should be great, in my opinion. I like those kind of pairings. So that's it for this episode. As usual, you can email us at thebirdwatcherspodcast@gmail.com. On Twitter, follow us, comment, like things, at podcast TBW. That's podcast TBW. And then on YouTube, we're the Bird Watchers, if you use that to listen to your podcast. And then on Reddit, we're the Bird Watchers podcast, where I'm always active on there. Jumping into conversations where I have no business being, but I love throwing in my 2 cents. So once again, yeah, thanks for listening. Sorry for the hiatus, but we're back. And, I might have a little gift for you guys coming up this week, because some cool things have happened in Contenders that we need to talk about as we move into the new structure of the Atlantic Division, Pacific Division playoffs, and how those are structured for the first cross region outside of the World Cup, but the first cross region Contenders event. That should be really cool. So we'll talk about the lead up to that and how our academy team has been performing. But as usual, thanks for listening, guys. Until next time, see ya.
I have destroyed more of your kind than I can count.
You weren't giving those guns to toss them around like trash.
I don't take lessons from you.